Hi guys, welcome to Outdoor Photo's first official podcast. We'd like to welcome Cameron here from Rode. He's going to assist us and walk us through a couple of these different options. And on this special day, it's International Podcast Day.
Indeed it is.
And we're looking forward to learning a little bit more and diving into what we need to get a podcast up and running and what would be the easiest and best solutions to different problems that we might get up ahead.
Thanks. It's good to be here. Thanks very much thanks very much for having me here. Really appreciate it. It's going to be a good one. I'm looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for taking some time out and coming through to our new setup. The new studio is up and running. We're looking forward to doing a lot more videos in this setup.
Awesome.
And doing tech reviews and everything. And today we are getting the opportunity to play around with all these new cool things like the Rode Procaster, the Blackmagic Atom Mini, and obviously this whole mic setup.
100%.
But we'll get into it.
I must just say the studio looks amazing. It really, you guys have done a fantastic job here.
Thank you. We try. I wanted to find out from you what on this podcast day. What is a podcast? Where do we start? What is podcast about?
100%. Well, if you think about it, I mean, podcasting, it's designed into our DNA. We're humans. We like to tell and we like to share stories. So we've theoretically been doing it since the dawn of time. But when they invented radio, we now had the opportunity to talk to many people at the same time. And obviously then with TV, that expanded a little bit further. They started adding video and things into it. But I think more recently, because podcasting started in about 2008, that's when it really started to grow. And I think during lockdown, anyone that had an idea or had a thought, we had to change the way we communicated. And having access to the internet and having access to gear that made it super easy, I think that really, really forced it in, or at least caused it to grow. But podcasting is really just spoken word. It's just communication. And it's sharing an idea. It's sharing a story to people that actually listen to you.
Have you found that since COVID and the lockdown and international issues with getting out and getting your message across, that podcast has really flared up again?
Oh, absolutely. It's more than doubled. As of April 2021, there are over 20 million podcasts online. That means there's over 48 million episodes available online. So just to give you perspective.
That is pretty big.
100%.
That's pretty big. And obviously, looking at the different hosting platforms and things, we'll get into the gear that we're looking at. What would you need to get this whole thing started?
100%.
Where do you put this stuff? How do you start?
Yes.
Let's start off with, I've got an idea. I want to have a chat with somebody and I want to put it out there. Or, even just sharing my own opinion.
100%.
Where do we start?
Look, the first place I always recommend to people to start is just with a plan. Think about your audience demographic. What do you want to say? Who's going to listen to it? Where do they hang out? Those are the sort of things you need to look at. Now, are you just going to talk by yourself? Are you going to share your own story? Are you going to interview people? Take all of these things into account before you go out and you go buy a product. Because, as you start to get things going, you don't want to overcapitalize and buy the top end item and you actually only need a microphone. But once you've done that, the very first place that you should look at is a decent quality microphone. If you think about it, that's the unit that's actually capturing your spoken word. So that's the thing you really want to splurge on for lack of a better word. You don't have to buy the most expensive top-of-the-range microphone, but get something that's of a fair quality, probably going to be a little bit more than what you were anticipating to spend initially. But as I say, get a good microphone, because that's if your quality is not good, or at least your production quality is not decent, you're going to lose your audience within the first couple of minutes.
We have found that if your audio quality isn't good, people drop off. They go on. They move on to the next thing. So obviously, setting up a good video shot, the guys always start with a sound.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got your sound right, everything else will fall into place a lot easier.
Exactly.
So very similar with podcast, obviously even more so because it's all evolving around the audio.
100%. If you think about it, we just spoke about how many podcasts there are out there. So if you start a podcast and your audio quality is bad, your listener's just going to switch off. There's 100 other podcasts out there that sound better. So you need to be at a certain standard if you want your podcast to grow, at least.
Okay. Well, looking at that, microphones, obviously you get USB microphones. You brought some of the products in today so that we can have a look at them and discuss what is a great starter setup. How do you progress? For which reason would you look at the different microphones? And also what the differences are in these microphones.
The rule of thumb is you get different microphones that are designed for different applications. You have live microphones, you have USB microphones, you have studio microphones, and they all are designed for specific purposes. I think the best thing to start with is just the discussion between dynamic and condenser microphones, because those will be the two that you come up against most in the industry.
Yeah.
So a dynamic microphone, without getting into super technical explanations, we're using a dynamic microphone at the moment. It's got a little diaphragm, and the air pressure that comes out of your mouth pushes that diaphragm backwards and forwards. But you need a fair amount of energy to move that little diaphragm. So what that means is the microphone is not that sensitive, which is it's bad because it doesn't give you a natural, accurate response of your voice, but it's good because it's forgiving. It doesn't pick up all the noises in a facility. If you don't have acoustic treatment, or if there's people talking outside, or you're a home podcaster.
Air cons.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They're much more forgiving. Whereas a condenser microphone, it uses a piece of mylar foil. The easiest way to think of it is a piece of tin foil that's stretched over a diaphragm. So it's super sensitive, super accurate, gives you proper representation of what your voice actually sounds like. But if a cricket's outside biting on a piece of grass, it's going to pick that up. So
Not ideal.
no, not at all.
Obviously, that moves across to soundproofing and everything. And obviously, soundproofing helps a lot, but it's not necessary as such when you're looking at a setup with the right microphones. Correct. And eventually a different interface.
Correct.
You can control a lot of those ambient noises that do creep in.
Yes, there's a couple of tricks. If you use a dynamic microphone initially, and believe it or not, use a live microphone. A live microphone for singers is actually designed to be used in a high noise environment on a stage. So they're actually pretty decent at rejecting noise. So if you get a standard sort of handheld microphone for your first podcast, it's probably going to be pretty forgiving if you're using it in a kitchen or if you're using it in your lounge where you don't have acoustic treatment.
Okay. Now, where would you say the condenser mic actually fits into? Where's the practical use of it?
A condenser is always going to sound better. Always. But unless your facility is treated, it's not going to work for a podcast environment. So if you're like the studio that we're in, a condenser microphone will sound fantastic. It'll pick up all the little sibilances and the magic of your voice. That's why you use them in studio. That's why singers use them to record for albums. They're much better at producing the real frequencies that come from your voice. But if you don't have a treated facility, then a dynamic is always going to be a much better solution.
Okay. All right. Looking at the other options then, USB versus plugins, depending on if you're shooting straight to camera, or you're shooting to a mixing desk, or you're shooting straight to your laptop. I mean, some of the people are obviously setting up with different setups. Totally. What, as we mentioned a couple of times already, you don't really need all of this. Don't tell my boss that. But you don't really need all of this. All these things do make life a lot easier.
Exactly.
A little bit more complicated, but it does make life easier. But to start off with, I mean, we really want to get people out and doing this. What would you say, where do those different microphones fit into, plugins versus USB, and what are the downfalls of using the wrong one at the wrong time?
So in the beginning, I said that whole planning, thinking about what you're trying to do. So if you want to do video, say you've got a camcorder microphone and you want to do 2 interviews, there are solutions. There's the wireless Go 2 that'll work quite nicely. But if you want to do pure podcasting, you just want to get your thoughts, your ideas up onto the internet, a USB microphone is actually quite an easy thing to use. Most of them are class compliant. So what that means, you plug it into your laptop and it just works. So if you don't have a rocket scientist degree and you just want to get podcasting, it's a very quick, easy solution. Most USB microphones are usually condenser microphones though. So sometimes you'll go out and you'll buy the microphone and it doesn't sound good because you're sitting in the lounge and you can hear the reflections and it's sounding echoey. It's just because they're usually condenser microphones. So The main difference between a USB mic and a plug-in microphone is that a USB mic has a preamplifier built into it. So what a preamp is the microphone produces a tiny little signal, and the preamp just amplifies it up to a point where we can actually use it on the internet. So USB mics have them built in, but you can also buy plug-in mics much like these, and then you have an external preamplifier or an audio interface. So having an external means you can use any microphone with any audio interface with any computer, whereas with a USB mic, it's a fit for purpose built product. You know, once you've got one USB mic, that's it.
It's kind of built and designed for the guy that's at home or that's doing something, streaming from his laptop or whatever the setup might be.
That's it.
But it's more designed for, I don't want to call it a one-man show, but it's a great place to start.
100%. And with so in the Rode category, we have fit for purpose design products. So for example, we have the podcasting range of microphones. We've actually got USB podcasting options. The Procaster, it looks like a proper radio broadcast microphone. We've got the pod mics, which are designed specifically for the vocal frequency, designed specifically for vocal frequencies.
Okay.
And then we've got our Procaster, which you'll find in radio studios all over the world. And then we've got our Broadcaster, which has got a condenser capsule in it. That's our flagship radio broadcast microphone. But again, you have to use that in a proper treated facility to really get decent sound out of it.
It's kind of fascinating how audio comes down to such an intricate science.
Definitely.
And it's something that, again, I just want to mention is a very big factor. So for the guys out there trying to get their own podcast up and running and try and do their own thing, audio is very, very, very important.
100%.
So if you're really getting into it, make sure you've got the right audio equipment, and then from there you can basically put the rest together.
Definitely, yeah. In terms of USB microphones, Rode have actually got a really cool little solution called the NT-USB Mini. So it is class compliant. It's got its preamp and everything built into it. You can plug it in and off you go. But they've just released software for it that allows you to use 4 microphones at the same time off the same computer, all via USB. The software is free. It allows you to record. It also allows you to bring in digital clients like Zoom or like Microsoft Teams. So you can actually have a conversation with somebody that's not in the room with you. Plus, it's got little digital buttons that you can click for sound effects or for intros. So it gives you a full sort of podcasting production studio in one little package. But also really good for guys doing live streaming on gaming. So if you've got a Twitch account, etc., you can put the microphone onto a stand like this, and you can just have it sitting up here while you're communicating, while you're playing your gaming. Very versatile little.
Multifunctional.
Definitely.
Awesome. And obviously it's got its audio controls, everything else onto it. One of the big things that I also saw on this is the magnetic desk stand connector. So obviously that'll be strong enough. Like you mentioned, you can add it onto an arm or whatever and very easily get it clipped on
100%.
or mount it where necessary.
Mm-hmm.
So looks like a fascinating little product. We were talking about the smart lavs or the wireless Go kits.
Yes.
And it's become something that's kind of very necessary for the guys going out and recording interviews.
100%.
So obviously if we're sitting down, we're having a chat on around a table similar to this, but you don't want to go with this full setup. A very good audio option is something like the wireless Go.
100%.
And with the new kits that you guys have available, you've got 2 lapel transmitters that wirelessly transmit to one receiver that you either connect onto your desk or into your laptop or wherever you're streaming from, even onto the cameras. What I want to find out from you is controlling that system and the audio setup with that. So just lapel options for that, because if I'm not mistaken, it only comes as a little cube transmitter, which is a mic.
Correct. Yeah, it's got the microphone built into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you want to hide that a little better,
there's 2 options. So you can either go with the Lav Go, which is a lapel extension. Then you can use it as a belt pack transmitter, and then you can run the cable up through your shirt. Alternatively, they've got this little device over here called a Mag Clip Go, which is quite cute. It just clips onto the belt pack, and it adds a magnet, so you can actually put that lav go wherever you want to, and then
Out of frame, but quite easy to mount.
Totally, yeah. And then if you've got that proximity effect, it gets quite boomy, or you pick up neck scratching or anything like that on a beard. It's useful to be able to bring it down.
Or swallowing sounds like in some of my previous videos. Audio is tricky.
Totally.
And obviously that adds on to something I want to touch on is audio on ears.
100%.
So we in the studio here are using the MC100s, the Mackies, over-ear headphones. Audio quality obviously very good, but the big reason for that is you obviously want to hear what it sounds like.
100%, yeah. It's quite weird if you try listen, because obviously the headphones, you can hear what the actual production quality sounds like, but if you can't hear yourself while you talk, it actually messes with your brain a little bit. I don't know if you must try it sometime, because the headphones actually tend to block out all of the noises and distractions.
Especially if there's an echo or something like that running
right.
around, then you start getting confused and things don't sound right.
100%, yeah. But for headphones, as long as it sounds good, as long as it's comfortable. If you're sitting doing podcasts all day, you don't want something that's compressing your brain. And I find these very comfortable. I think they sound pretty.
They are
pretty
quite comfortable. Well. Yeah, and obviously, like you said, it cancels out audio that might be a different problem. So you're literally hearing what you're going to be broadcasting.
Exactly right.
Which makes a big difference.
100%, yeah. And to block out those distractions is if you're doing a podcast and someone's trying to grab your attention in the corner, it's useful because you can block them out and you can focus on what you're doing.
Yeah. One of the things that you also mentioned, and I want to touch onto some of these items in a second. You've obviously got some of the color matchy thingy huikikis.
Yeah.
It's just to get the different channels on the different microphones. So now we're talking about different microphones. And that comes through to where I want to discuss something like this.
100%.
In a larger setup, you can obviously run a couple of those NT-USBs, depending on how many USB interfaces you've got on your laptop or whatever. Where do these panels come into play?
Well, Gunther, I saw you this morning setting everything up here. There's so many things to think about, so many buttons and so many things happening while you're doing a live podcast like this. So something like this Rodecaster Pro puts all of those functions and features into one place, makes it easy to operate. Before this was invented, there was nothing really like this except for big radio broadcast consoles, which are, a lot more money than what this was. So what Rode did is they said, okay, well, let's take the podcasting community, let's design a product that makes their lives easier. So if you've got an interview type setup like this, or if you want to put together a decent quality podcast with decent production, when I say production, high quality audio, sound effects, stingers and things that you bring into it, this gives you access to all of that functionality in one go. You can actually use up to 4 microphones on the system, so you can have 4 people in your interview. It's got a Bluetooth connectivity, so you can connect your cell phone to it. You can have 2-way communication, bring somebody in, do an interview in your podcast as well. It's got a full 2-way audio interface built into it, so you can do playback from your computer. So if you want sound effects, or if you're doing a radio production type setup or internet radio type production, you can actually play your music through this as well. And then it's got a hardline connection. You can bring an analog line signal into this, or an external playback device, or if you're playing videos from your cell phones, it can come in there as well. Not only that, it's got its playback buttons, so you've got 8 banks of 8 little playback buttons that you can use for sound effects, your intro songs, clapping, applause, those kind of things are all built into it.
I mean, we've managed to drag and drop a very simple and easy to use system.
Exactly.
Got our little jingle going on here. We can add this audio, take it off. Like I said, add a bit of applause in there, and control the volume. And when you make a boo-boo, we can straight out point it out.
And that production quality just adds to the whole concept. If you think about great podcasters that you watch, it's those things that make it professional, that make it enjoyable to listen to. So it's useful to have those things.
I was surprised with how easily this thing is customizable. In setting it up, the touchscreen interface, getting through to these audio banks, setting them up. changing the colors on these buttons is also possible. Everything, the whole interface. I mean, when we set this thing up yesterday, we were making phone calls to other colleagues via the Bluetooth system. And all of a sudden, we can now expand the podcast. It's not only between you and me,
100%.
It's now a phone call away from anybody else.
100%. I think Rode designed this for people that want to podcast, not technical people. Because you don't need, as I mentioned, that rocket scientist degree. It's really simple, as you say. It's drag and drop. It's easy to operate. They've even got little things like this little XLR ID so that you can match the color of your cable with the color on the microphone there, so you don't have to label things.
Those aren't leaving with you, are they?
No, they can stay there.
The cable management's obviously been a bit of a story, and we're still getting around all of that. But that's probably been the biggest fuss around this, is just getting all the cables tucked away in the studio and everything else. I have an issue with manuals. Read through a manual is great, gives you a great idea of what's going on, and sometimes people delve into a manual too deep. I am a hands-on kind of guy, so I like putting the thing down, plug it in, press buttons, and try and figure it out. And I had, 4 questions for you this morning?
100%.
The rest was super easy for me to figure out and find my way around this desk.
Absolutely.
So it really, truly is a system that is user-friendly and quite easy to set up and get you up and running.
100%. If you think about it, you're controlling 3 cameras, you're controlling 2 microphones, you're controlling all of the audio features, plus you're streaming it live. You've got to think about all of these things while you're still trying to have a conversation with somebody.
Yeah.
The easier the gear is to operate, it just makes your life so much better.
Yes. Now, whilst we are using the Blackmagic Atom Mini for our video streaming and recordings and things like that, and controlling the different cameras, hi guys, this system has made that phase a lot easier. But 100%. You mentioned there are options to incorporate this into the software that's also available for the Procaster.
Absolutely. If you use a system like OBS, that's outside broadcasting software, or which is free software that you can
download,
use. Yeah. And if you have 3 or 4 cameras set up in your facility, you'll set up scenes in OBS. So scene 1 will be you, scene 1 will be me, scene 3 will be the 3 of us, scene 4 might be your intro graphics, etc., etc. The Rodecaster Pro has opened up MIDI control. So these little push buttons, you can use them to trigger scenes in OBS.
Oh wow!
So if you've got a permanent setup, you can control everything from your OBS, from OBS, and you can control it with the Rodecaster Pro.
That helps a lot. Again, just simplifying everything. 100%. So it's quite a big unit. Are there other units in the range that you would recommend, or that one can have a look at as well?
Look, that can do this. No, this is a first of its kind. There are many people that are copying it. I'm seeing little brands, but leaders always lead and followers always follow. But what I mentioned earlier with the NT USB, the software, that's Rode Connect. You can download it for free. Opens up a lot of the features that you get on this console. Via a computer. It's iOS or Android, or you can it's iOS or it's on PC. But they've also now recently opened it up so that the Wireless Go, you mentioned earlier, the Wireless Go 2, you can use it on that software as well. So that gives you a full production suite on your computer. So if you're doing a video production or video audio production, you record the audio on that software, and you've got all of the production facilities and processing and the Aural Exciter and the big bottom, which is all built into this unit. You've got access to all of that on software.
That's great. And again, it just draws back to the Rodecaster Pro. It is one of a kind.
100%.
It's a super easy setup. It's been really easy for me to fiddle around and figure out. Getting the Bluetooth up and running. The touchscreen is a great user interface. The dials are very self-explanatory, obviously volumes in and out, and quite easy to fade things in and out and control the whole setup. So it is something that I would personally highly recommend to anybody that's getting involved in things like these and want to get a podcast up and running.
Definitely.
You mentioned something earlier with the gamers as well. Obviously, they've got audio inputs and everything, and they want to stream, and you mentioned Twitch. So that's the next thing I want to find out about. I've got the kit up and running now. Now what now? Where do I stream my podcast to?
So, first of all, obviously this works nicely for podcasting, but you can use it as well for internet radio. We've got a couple of radio DJs that are actually using it for their tours. We've got a couple of internet radio celebrities that are using these. But for gaming, it works very well. If you're a gaming live streamer, you'll have those scenes that we spoke about earlier. You'll have a couple of certain shots that you use while you're playing your game live. And these consoles make that a lot easier. But if you're a beginner gamer and you're not looking at the sort of budget, that NT USB Mini that we spoke about earlier is really effective because, as I say, you get all the production quality. Most game streamers will only really be talking on one mic. They'll have a headset and they'll have their mic that they're talking to their team with. And having that NT USB with the power of the Rodecaster works very well for Twitch. Rode actually have their own little Twitch team out of interest, the Rode Warriors. So if you guys want to check it out,
all right.
They're really getting behind gaming. But now podcasting, if you want to get your podcast up and out there, the best thing to do is start researching hosting sites. So there's obviously many different hosting sites that you can look at. Some are free, some are paid. But I definitely recommend looking at some YouTube clips, learn a little bit about these things before you put your material up there. You know what they say, if you're not paying for a service, then you're not the customer. So a lot of these free servicing sites will either limit bandwidth, they'll limit the amount of listeners that you can have, the amount of playbacks you can have. Some of them even will take ownership of your material. So you've got to read the fine print quite carefully. You don't want to put it up, upload it, and then it's not yours anymore. But what that podcasting hosting site will do is that'll send an RSS feed to various podcast playback platforms, much like Google Podcasts or Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And that's the key with podcasts. Because if you think about it, it's a quite a beefy piece of audio that you're putting up online. If you put it on your website and 1,000 people listen to it, they're going to use up all of your bandwidth on your website. So a podcast hosting site, that's the way to actually get it to work.
It's a better platform to host it to.
Definitely, yeah.
And even platforms like Spotify.
So Anchor by Spotify is a free system that they've just put up. It's quite nice. A lot of guys are using it. But as I say, it's best for you to do a little bit of research and see what you're happy to sacrifice on. If you're a business or somebody like that, then rather pay for the service. You don't want to, use it to attract clients and then there's an advert that pops up or something that's not meant to be there. So, but BuzzFeed, there's a number of sites that you can look at for that.
Yeah. One of the other things now that you were mentioning about the paying or the fees that are incorporated into these services, getting little jingles or background music playing, adding a little bit of ambience. There's something that I always try to mention to people. They have to be aware on their videos and audio podcasts, whatever, is royalty-free music. 100%. So obviously using, hey, I bought this on iTunes, so this track is mine, doesn't quite really work like that. You 100%. Can't play it on these things.
100%, yeah. Our royalties need to be paid to the musicians that manufacture the music. And if you don't have the rights to use somebody's music and you use it on your podcast, most podcasting sites will just cut it off. YouTube, if you're doing a live stream and it senses that it's copyrighted material, it just chops your live stream. And if you're doing a business presentation to 1,000 people, it can be very embarrassing. So get yourself registered on a royalty-free music website. Some of them you do have to pay, but you are paying for somebody that came up with the music, and you've then got the rights to use that music wherever you go.
And are there websites that you've got subscriptions to?
Yes.
That you can actually use some of the more popular tracks?
So using the popular tracks is quite tricky. You need to get express permission from the guys that own the track. So it is possible, but if you contact a huge big record company for your podcast, they might not respond to your email. It depends on who you are, and sometimes you have to pay exorbitant fees for it.
So it's just not worth it.
Not always, but there's good stuff out there. Hey, geez, there's some really talented guys that are making really great vibey backtracks that you can use.
I think it's also a great place to kind of try and get involved with the local scenes more.
Agreed.
Trying to promote the local music a little bit more. The guys that are in the video industry, kind of reach out to those guys and rather support your local guys than supporting the international guys. 100%. They've got enough people supporting them.
And it's also probably going to be a lot more cost effective if you speak to the local guys to use their tracks, and probably a lot easier to get hold of them. Than trying to use international tracks. But I love that. I love that initiative. Yes, support local as much as you possibly can.
I think the great thing about it as well is that you are kind of boosting the local scene a lot more, and you can still get hold of some trendy music or incorporate something that really is kind of South African to incorporate the whole package together.
Definitely agree with that. 100%. Yeah, and then once your podcast is up, then the trick is trying to get people to hear your podcast, and distribution is a big thing. Organic reach, we mentioned earlier, the millions of podcasts that are out there. Organic reach is very difficult to achieve, so it's useful to tap into other resources like TikTok and YouTube and Facebook, and obviously spam your mom and your mom's friends, and get as many people as you can to share it, and slowly start to build an audience.
Yeah.
But it's YouTube putting if you're going to do a podcast, just a speech podcast, chuck up a camera and do a little short version of it, because YouTube's organic reach is actually pretty decent. Do a short little thing on TikTok that looks cool, depending on your audience. Obviously, we mentioned earlier the demographic. If your audience that you're aiming at is they prefer sitting on the farms and hunting with rifles, they're probably not going to be looking at TikTok. But know your audience, know where your audience hangs out on social media, and that's where you want to punt it as much as you possibly can.
Yeah, I think that's going to have a big role or effect into growing your following.
Definitely.
And that also has the next thing that comes up is, how regular would you say to bring out a podcast?
Ooh, that's a tricky question, and I'll give you my opinion. I don't know if there's a rule for it. I think sort of once a week is decent. It's a nice. You can develop a relationship with your listener. They can start to look forward to your podcast. But the thing is, if you're going to do that, make sure that you get it out at the same time every single week. What often happens is the guys will put 3 or 4 podcasts up and then they just disappear. And if you miss one of those podcasts, you're probably going to lose your audience. So consistency is key.
Yeah, and then obviously if you start missing those gaps, then you start losing out on your followers, and people also kind of lose the interest.
Definitely.
So that consistency, as you mentioned, is very, very vital.
100%.
And also the communication between you and the followers. I mean, it's not just about posting a podcast. It's about having a platform where they can reach out to you.
100%.
I think that'll be an interesting thing as we move on in this podcast specifically, is trying to get the listeners more involved. So for you guys watching us right now on this video, please feel free to comment, throw us with emails. We'll get an email address up and running for this. And the idea is to reach out to you guys. And if there's something specific that you guys want to hear, see, or just experience from either the suppliers or other photographers or whoever, we want to create something that people want to follow, and that we are reachable as well.
That's awesome.
And I think that's a big thing that I would recommend to people starting out, is have a platform where people can reach out to you 100%. And get in contact.
Totally, yeah. There's something that I'm working on with our local marketing team that I truly believe in. We as South Africans, we tend to look overseas, but we've got so much culture, we've got so much power, we've got so much ability here in South Africa. So I think in a podcast, connect with people. Remember that people are watching it, and try to put out information that's interesting to the people that you're talking to, and interview South African local heroes, and do interesting things about people that are South Africans like us, as opposed to just trying to copy Joe Rogan or these international guys. We have so much culture and diversity here. Let's capitalize on that as much as we can.
Yeah.
We as Road, we're doing a series of videos now where we're actually connecting with the specialist in various retail stores, so that customers know, hey, that's the person that you go speak to. And you develop a relationship with him, and you know, when you walk into the store, you already know the guy that you're walking in to talk to.
That is quite a big thing for us in the shop, is actually trying to build relationships with the clients.
100%.
So that you've always got a go-to guy, and you know who to kick in the shin if something's not working. Please don't kick anybody in the shin, guys. But it's just to create a better relationship, and the guys here also try and be hands-on as much as possible in terms of the products. 100%. And I have to thank you guys for bringing these things out. I mean, being able to hold and work with these things, and always being able to reach out if we've got a very specific problem.
Absolutely.
You guys have a very specific resolution to it.
100%.
So it does make it a lot easier, and the quality on the products have been phenomenal.
100%. Yeah, look, one of the things with Rode is their warranties are next level. On some of their products, you can get up to a 10-year warranty. No questions asked. We've tried it. We spoke about the NT1A earlier, which is a studio condenser microphone. We had one come in. It was about 9.5 years old. It looked like it had been thrown down an escalator. They brought it in, Rode replaced it. Not a problem at all. No questions asked. So their warranties are great.
And that's kind of what you want. You
Exactly.
want a product that if I've got support on this product, I know I can run with this. If there's ever an issue, we can get it solved.
Exactly right.
And it just keeps on building on your confidence on the whole setup.
Yep.
And moving forward, you can concentrate on doing your job.
100%. That's exactly right. So I would say, I mean, from a podcasting perspective, it's very much about your content. Make sure your content is authentic, that it's real. Make sure that you've thought about how to get your podcast out. You've thought about how to communicate with your listeners. As you say, two-way communication. And then marketing. Marketing is a big part of podcast. The material is just a small part of what you're actually doing. And then determination. Hey, you know, don't give up after 3 podcasts.
Got to keep on. Got to keep
exactly
on.
Right.
Cameron, I want to thank you so much for joining us.
100%.
Guys, thank you very much for watching this first podcast. Feel free to drop us any information, comments. Let us know what's working, what's not working. And also reach out and tell us, listen, we want to hear more about these products or those products. For today, again, thank you, Cameron, for joining us for International Podcast Day.
There we go.
Hopefully, we'll get a couple of other people up and hearing their voices pretty soon.
100%. And don't forget to check out the Rode Reel competition. So Rode offer an international competition for guys doing short films. You can win up to $250,000. They do it every single year. They also just had their podcast competition with the Rode podcast competition, and 2 South African guys actually won. I think they won 3rd and 5th place. So that's cool. Mzansi bringing it back home, eh?
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Not a problem.
I think we're going to call it a day. We'll have our little outro playing in.
Awesome.
And,
all the best.
Guys, thank you very much for joining us. Thank you for checking out this podcast. Stick around. We will get them up and running more often. And by the word of it, 1 a week. Sounds like it.
There we go.
Thank you, guys.
Cool.
Enjoy the day.
Ciao.
Cheers.